Starts with a C, ends in AOS, and it's exactly what the Big 12 needs now. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Today's episode is one that you stick around for. This is, I don't want to say the most informational that I'll give, but I want to go through multiple scenarios and multiple ways that your Big 12 team can succeed long-term, how this conference shakes out long-term. So today, we're going to hit who can knock off Oklahoma and Texas. Bowl or bust. How many bowl teams are sitting in the Big 12? And TCU and West Virginia. This whole ACC thing, is it real? First and foremost, let's all kind of gather in really closely. Let's tell each other a secret here. Nobody wants Oklahoma and Texas to win the Big 12 championship. If you're an OU fan or a Texas fan, it's not personal. I actually think I kind of like Oklahoma. They are, to me, tough to hate because Texas is the big one that everybody hates, right? I'm more upset at Texas than I am anybody else in this whole expansion scenario. But all the rest of us have to agree we want to see anyone but Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. So how does that happen? Well, if you look at the Big 12 standings right now, Oklahoma at 4-0, you'll be hard-pressed to find somebody who dethrones an undefeated team in the Big 12, 7-0 overall. Texas at 3-1. And here's where we get crazy. Here's what matters and what we need to have a pulse on. Iowa State, 3-1. Oklahoma State, 3-1. Kansas State, 3-1. Now, all three of those teams have at least one loss outside of Big 12 play that will not matter for the Big 12 championship. So their overall records don't look good, and they might not be ranked for the duration of this season. However, we don't need them to be. We simply need them to have the mathematic edge to get into the Big 12 championship. Let's pretend for right now that Oklahoma is going to finish the league undefeated. Probably the best case scenario here. And to give you some perspective with that, the rest of their schedule features just had UCF, Kansas, tough game. They should win. Oklahoma State. I do find myself talking myself into them losing to Oklahoma State. West Virginia at home. They probably win that game. BYU on the road. If it's a night game, they might lose that game. And then TCU at home, they should win that game. So what I see is 2 losses being the maximum for Oklahoma over the course of its final 5 games this season. Yet, if OU loses 2 games, there is a terrible scenario in which a 2-loss team gets into the Big 12 championship that is named Oklahoma. So if they go undefeated and somebody else is able to knock Texas out of this conversation, that might not be the worst thing. So for now, what I want to do in this scenario is pin Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship, and we're going to find somebody to upset them down the line. Here's what we really need. Texas has to slip up. Now, we know they don't have Quinn Ewers, and they likely won't have Quinn Ewers moving forward. Texas is going to beat BYU this week. BYU is terrible at day games. It's a 2:30 kickoff from DKR. Give me the Longhorns. Past that, Kansas State dual threat quarterbacks. They have 2 guys who are anchoring the team on the ground, anchoring the team through the air. DJ Giddens is really good. I think Sinnott's one of the most underrated skill players in the Big 12. Kansas State needs. This isn't they could. Kansas State needs to beat Texas. Reminder, that's a Kansas State team that has an opportunity to go to the Big 12 championship. And if Texas, without its starting quarterback, with a true freshman at quarterback, falls to Kansas State, that puts K-State at 1 loss, Texas at 2. Then the Longhorns, hear me out here, would have to hope that Kansas State loses 2 more games. Because a 2-loss Kansas State and a 2-loss Texas, when Kansas State has the head-to-head, that's the Wildcats. They go to the Big 12 championship. Hear me here. UT is legitimately 1 loss away from being out of the conversation, or at least out for the time being, of the Big 12 championship game. And brother, that would be huge, massive. We as a Big 12 fan base are now rooting for Kansas State to knock off Texas. UT also has TCU, that game on the road. I don't know. I don't think Texas is going to lose to TCU, even in Amon G. Carter. TCU's floundering right now, and I don't know if TCU is going to get to a bowl game at the end of the year, much less beat Texas. So let's throw that game out. Texas wins it. UT gets Iowa State later this year. Now, remember, that's another Same as Kansas State, team who is 3-1 in conference play and has the Big 12 championship set in its sights. I know it's ugly. I know it's gross. They had 2 losses in the non-conference to Iowa and Ohio. It's not great to have Iowa State as one of your final fighting members to win a Big 12 championship, but at the same time, I love it. It's that word that I mentioned at the top of the show, that's chaos. When you have chaos in this league, chaos enough that Texas could finish this year, this is a real, and I sound insane, but it's a real scenario. Texas loses to Kansas State and Iowa State. That could happen. Iowa State's defense looks like that right now. Rocco Beck looks like that right now. And Matt Campbell is just doing that thing that Mike Gundy's doing, and that is winning. There's a shot that Texas loses 2 more, and we all need to rally around the idea that happens. Now let's break it down from the standpoint. I told you I'm going to do bowl or bust in the middle segment today and bring up your team and whether or not they can make a bowl game. Here, these are teams that should be a lock for a bowl game. We'll start with Iowa State. Iowa State already has 4 wins coming up on the docket. They got Baylor this weekend. With every fiber in me, I graduated from Baylor University 3 months ago. Oh, wow. Time flies. 6 months ago. With every fiber in me, I need Iowa State to win this game for the sake of the Big 12 Conference. I want to see Iowa State in the Big 12 Championship or Iowa State and Kansas State in the Big 12 Championship more than I need to see Baylor win a 2:30 homecoming game on FS, whatever it is. Iowa State then gets Kansas at home. Here's where another underdog story is going to have to peter out. We have to... Kansas has to lose some games for an Iowa State to make it to the Big 12 championship game. There is a realm in which Iowa State beats Baylor, beats Kansas, beats BYU. That's probably going to be a night game, which is not good for Iowa State. Loses to Texas, loses to Kansas State. This might have to be our sacrificial lamb. Because Iowa State has the Kansas State game at the end of the docket here, because they have BYU at night, likely, because they have Texas here, I'm throwing out Iowa State as our team to make it to the Big 12 championship, despite the fact you should still root for them down the line. Now, the 2 legitimate, in my opinion, the most legitimate contenders to knock off Texas and Oklahoma State, the team that lost 33-7 to South Alabama. Once they beat Kansas State, that turned the tide, flipped the switch. 3 straight wins since then, and they get Cincinnati at home this week. I love the idea of the new guys having some share of the pot, of the new guys being good to an extent, but I can't. They can't. I can't root for Cincinnati in this one. I'm going to need Oklahoma State to keep winning football games, including against Cincinnati. I'm going to need them to blow Cincinnati out, mind you. And so Oklahoma State, if we can rally around this idea, could be representative for the Big 12 championship. Wouldn't be their first. They're 7.5-point favorites this week. I would hammer that. Then they get Oklahoma at home. How great would it be if that's it? If that's what we need? If we can boot Texas and Oklahoma both, it's going to take Oklahoma State winning at home against OU, but they got a shot to do it. Then Oklahoma State goes to UCF. Give me the Cowboys. Oklahoma State plays at Houston. That's so guys, of the next 4 games Oklahoma State has, 3 are against UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, teams that can't seem to win a Big 12 game. One of those is against Oklahoma, sure. All I'm asking is for you to do 3 things that you're supposed to do and beat Oklahoma on the top. Then they face BYU at home in the last game of the season with a shot. Give the ball to Ollie Gordon with a shot to go to the Big 12 championship. And the last hope in the Big 12 to go to this title. I'm throwing out all these 2-loss teams for now, a la West Virginia, Kansas, BYU. Baylor, what are you doing here? Kansas State. Here's the dog that should be able to do it. They have Houston at home this weekend. Yes! Hammer them. And they have Texas on the road. Then Baylor at home. Yes! Hammer them. Then Kansas at Kansas in state. Yes! Hammer them. Iowa State at Kansas State. What I'm telling you is of the last 5 games, Houston, Texas, Baylor, Kansas, Iowa State, Kansas State will be favored in 4 of them. So just like Oklahoma State, I'm asking you to do one thing. Win the games you're supposed to. 2 things. Win the game you're supposed to, and then pull off one monumental upset. Do you see the path? I know we still got 5 weeks left of the season, but I want to bring you the path to Oklahoma and Texas missing out on the Big 12 championship. Yeah. How about bowl or bust? Who's going bowling? This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team, and it's every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. It's where I went to find my intern, and she is great. LinkedIn Talent Solutions is the number one place to go when you need the right hire for your small business. It's small businesses ready to get number one in America in new hires. Be 100% sure that you have the best qualified candidates available. That's why you go to LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for free and fast. Add your job to the purple hashtag hiring frame on your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools, screening questions, make it easy to focus on the candidates with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege, linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Keep in mind, terms and conditions do apply. Who's going bowling in the Big 12? From BYU to Kansas, these teams that feel like they have the upper hand here to do so, to West Virginia, who seems to flounder, and Baylor, what are you doing here? To Texas Tech at 3-5. Not everybody can do it, but there's still a path to the Big 12 to find 10 teams bowling at the end of this season. Now, let's go ahead and lock in Oklahoma, they already have, and Texas as bowl teams. They're still in the Big 12. We'll take that money. Oklahoma State, Kansas State being a win away, they're going to go bowling. Now you look at Iowa State. They are 4-3 overall. They have Baylor coming up. That should be a win. Kansas coming up at home, the way Iowa State's playing, that very well could be a win. The Cyclones have won 3 of their last 4. BYU on the road is tough. Texas at home is tough. Kansas State at home is tough. I will say, of a team that needs 2 wins, who has Baylor, Kansas, BYU, Texas, Kansas State, my jury's out. I know that we had a conversation about Iowa State being able to go to the Big 12 championship, but at 4-3 with that on your docket and the way your road games fall, it's still going to be tough for Iowa State to go bowling this season. But Matt Campbell has that magic. Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, not only are they going bowling, they're going to win 8 games. Cincinnati, win. UCF, win. Houston, win. Oklahoma State is in a good position right now to win at least 8 and finish the season 8-4. You're in. Kansas State, same deal. You're in. For Kansas, before we get into BYU, West Virginia, for Kansas, you've got Iowa State on the road. Oklahoma, you host Texas Tech. You host Kansas State. That's some good home games right here. 3 of the next 4 are great home games. Then you go to Cincinnati. I'm going to check off that Cincinnati game as a win for Kansas because Cincy might finish 2-10 this season with 10 straight losses. Do I think that'll happen? Mathematically, it shouldn't. Right? That seems like a pretty out there possibility to lose 10 in a row, but it's a non-zero chance. Kansas, you're going bowling. Of the next 5 games, do I think you go 4-1? Probably not, because OU's in there. That's a road game against Iowa State. Kansas State's tough, but you got a shot to beat Texas Tech and Cincinnati. Give me a win over Cincinnati that at least gets Kansas in bowl conversation. BYU at 5-2. All you need is 1 game. Preseason, you were talking about how, if BYU could just go bowling this year, that's going to do it. And you know what? This conference has been chaotic enough that I'll give you a free pass that even going 6-6 your first year in the Big 12 is a big win. Texas on the road. I'm sorry. That doesn't look good. BYU at West Virginia. That also could sting. CJ Donaldson's great. I don't think West Virginia is all the way down and out. You host Iowa State and you host Oklahoma. One of those has to be at night. Whichever it is, BYU, you're going bowling. Congratulations. BYU's in. You're going to a bowl game. You at least get to 6-6. And you know what? If BYU does go from 5-2 to 6-6 to finish the year, don't write off this BYU team as being bad. The last 5 games on the schedule are really tough. So that of the last 5 games you get, going 1-4 in those, it's fine. I'll give it to you. West Virginia at 4-3 here. This one's a hairy one as well. West Virginia looks so good and has now lost 2 straight, including a 14-point ugly loss to Oklahoma State. Here's where things get better. You have to have a turnaround game against UCF. That's a win for West Virginia. You have to have a turnaround game against UCF and then carry it through with BYU coming to your house. If you beat UCF, West Virginia, you're going bowling, but you still have to fire Neil Brown because you're probably going to lose to Oklahoma. That Baylor game's not as easy as we thought it was going to be. Cincinnati at home, certainly a win. West Virginia beats UCF. Whether or not they beat BYU or Oklahoma or even Baylor, they go to a bowl game thanks to wins against UCF and Cincinnati. West Virginia is in. So we've talked ourselves at this point. Let's go ahead and throw in Iowa State for now. Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Kansas, BYU, West Virginia. That's eight bowl teams. That's a lot. And it's not madness to get that. And we're still missing Baylor. Well, again, why are you in this conversation? TCU and Texas Tech. I do have bad news to the Baylor Bears, though. I don't see a bowl in your future. Iowa State this week, I foresee being a loss. Houston, you probably beat. Kansas State on the road, that's a loss. TCU on the road, that's still probably a loss. I could see a win there. You're hard pressed. And then West Virginia at home, as good as that ground game is, you just give up 300 yards rushing to Cincinnati. If you're Baylor sitting right now at 3-4 overall, that Texas State loss comes back to bite you. I think the Bears finish at 5-7 probably. Those wins coming against Houston at home to get you to 4 wins on the season. And then I'll give you 1 of West Virginia and TCU. So the Big 12 still sits at 8 bowl teams. I want 2 more. I want 10, double digits. We need TCU or Texas Tech. TCU is not a long shot. I think the Horned Frogs at home beat Baylor. I see the Horned Frogs. Now, say it's not a long shot, but you've got Texas Tech on the road. That's not easy. You got Texas. That's tough. You have Baylor at home. That's a win. And then you go to Oklahoma. I need 1 win from TCU out of Tech, Texas, and Oklahoma. That's... Oof. If I'm a team that's struggling for bowl contention and that's what the rest of my schedule looks like, not exactly excited. I do think TCU gets it done against Texas Tech coming up because Tech is reeling that much. The ninth team for bowl contention in the Big 12 is TCU with a win against Texas Tech and a win against Baylor. TCU finishes 6-6 this season. Fire, Kendall, Bryles. And the last one that I'll bring up, because I think we've gone ahead and closed the book on Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati making it to a bowl game. It's just not going to happen this year for you guys. For the Texas Tech Red Raiders, UCF's a win. That's a win. TCU at home's tough. Kansas on the road is tough. And at Texas, obviously, is tough. I want to see nothing more than Texas Tech beat Texas and find a way to a bowl win, but you have to go 3-1 in your last 4 games against TCU, Kansas, UCF, and Texas. You got to win your next 3 effectively. I just don't know. Right now, bowl or bust, I'm going bust for Texas Tech at 3-5. I don't think Texas Tech gets to a bowl game, and I'm not crazy for saying it. You've got to go 3-1 in your last 4 after a 3-5 start. I don't see what's going to turn you around right now. Even if Baron Morton's back, I don't see what turns Texas Tech around. Tell you what, West Virginia, TCU, do they go to the ACC? This is Locked On Big 12. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's where I go. I take 2 props, I throw them in and say, you know what? You do the work. Saquon Barkley, more than 60 yards. Patrick Mahomes, 2 passing touchdowns. Parlay, boom. I can turn $10 into $250. And what I love about Prize Picks, it does a reboot policy. Even if one of your players gets hurt, you reboot. You're good. If you have one that exits the game, a player exits the game and does not return in the second half, so he's gone in the first half, not return in the second half, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. So right now, Prize Picks, PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. I'm going to give you a great deal here with code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks.com. Go check it out. All right. West Virginia and TCU. These Big 12 expansion rumors have really heated up in the last couple of weeks because there was this prominent advisor to the ACC who said we need to go get TCU and West Virginia. And I started thinking about it. As much as we, the Big 12, think that the Big 12 is going to go poaching on this poaching spree of ACC teams, the ACC is going to try to recoup when inevitably Clemson, Florida State, and UNC leave. Florida State's having a Board of Regents meeting coming up this Friday, actually, that could get pretty nasty when it comes to expansion, realignment, and them wanting to leave that conference. Do you think West Virginia wants to go? Do you think TCU wants to leave? Here's part of this is these universities will have a say in where their future lies. And if you're West Virginia, the West Virginia fan sees the football schedule and says, we don't have any close football games. The West Virginia fan says, I can't drive to any of these games. Whereas in the ACC, you've got Pitt, who's right there. You've got Virginia Tech, where you say, all right, yeah, let's hop in the car. Let's go to these games. Look at this. I want to read the schedule out to you for West Virginia in Big 12 play this season. West Virginia went on the road to face TCU. West Virginia went on the road to face Houston. They'll go on the road to face UCF. They'll be on the road against Oklahoma and against Baylor. You can't drive to any of those games. None of these are closed. This is just a terrible geographical situation for West Virginia fans, and I know many of them would want to go to the ACC. Now, if the money's in the Big 12, you wouldn't pass that up. But proximity is in the ACC. The Pitt rivalries in the ACC, and it's the same reason that TCU's name is being thrown in this hat. Let's not pretend here. West Virginia is not the Mecca pinnacle of education in America, and that's fine. It's one of the best party schools out there. It's one of the best to me, and some will disagree. It's one of historically the best athletic schools, especially in football. They are so good year in and year out, despite what Neil Brown wants you to think at football. He's the losingest coach since 1978. That says a lot about the history of West Virginia football. This is a great institution. Not academically. And that's what the ACC prides itself on. And that's what the ACC would go after TCU for, because TCU, next to SMU, says, hey, look, we pride ourselves on academics. And the ACC wants rivalries. What brings in money? What brings in big viewership? It's rivalries. TCU has one of those against SMU that today is not at the forefront of college athletics. People are not talking about TCU and SMU every year like, oh, can't wait to see that game. No. But they could. It has the making of that. So you send them to the ACC and have them set up with SMU. It gives SMU a partner in that conference geographically as well. And you now have a second middleman between Cal, Stanford, and the East Coast. For West Virginia, you give them proximity. This would all occur after the current TV deal is up. So we're looking at like a 2030 for this whole thing to go down. But the fact that a very prominent member of the ACC conference, a Wake Forest donor and advisor, someone who's helped call the shots in that league and has helped give the league direction, is saying we as a conference need to go after West Virginia and TCU. We shouldn't take this lightly. We shouldn't take this as, oh, here's some rogue guy who said some stuff. This dude sold his company for $2 billion and has since poured a lot of that money back into that conference, is a tight advisor with people at Florida State, a tight advisor with people across this conference from presidents to ADs, and has communicated with ADs what the future of the league needs to be. He's like a quasi Brett Yormark. He's like their pocket Brett Yormark. This guy's an unbelievable businessman saying, hey, here's where you go next. Here's what you do next. Here's where this thing ends up. And the way that he sees it, Ben Sutton is this guy's name. This is all the stuff we broke down late last week on the show. And the way that he sees this thing shaking out is this top-down college setup where it's one or two major conferences and everybody else gets left behind. His whole goal, which makes a lot of sense, is to get ahead of what the Pac-12 was. And instead of just sitting around and waiting and trying to demand things, going and taking teams, doing what the Big 12 is doing, taking teams to build up to be one of those power conferences when everything is said and done, because that's the trajectory of where we're going. And if the ACC, who currently has less money per school than the Big 12, thinks that it can change that the next TV deal, the next time that goes around and the Big 12 has to reevaluate, or the ACC has reworked its TV deal because 3 teams have decided to leave, there are a lot of ins and outs to that, they feel confident that West Virginia and TCU are in the fold for that conference. So my question is, let's play God here. If you're a president at TCU or West Virginia, if you're in charge at TCU or West Virginia, would you leave? Given the offer right now, the pen and paper, contracts on your desk, you make the call. Will you leave the Big 12, considering the future of college athletics and what all is left, and where everything is going to this? We talked about a super conference deal. Would you call the shot? TCU join SMU, Pitt right there waiting for West Virginia. Would you do it? It's in your hands. I wouldn't, but you tell me, would you leave the Big 12? Hopefully the answer is no for you and the powers that be. This has been and always will be. Come back tomorrow. We'll do more Big 12 stuff. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Doce Grande.